Right, let's kick this off. I'm Jeff Moss, and I'm here with a panel. And so this is what we call the Locknote session. It is a unique black hat innovation, thanks to Steve Wiley and Steve Oldenburg, who cooked up this idea. It's part of a trick to get you all to stay longer. And it's working. And so the idea of a Locknote is to have more of a conversation between some of the review board members and some audience members. We definitely go into a question and answer session later on, so it's not just us talking amongst each other. At some point, you get to talk and ask us questions, get our opinions. And the idea is sort of, I always notice that when there's a bunch of us sitting around, we're having beers, or we're at the bar afterward, people would always kind of gather around. They want to hear what sort of the experts are talking about. And just listen in, like, well, what do we talk about in our spare time? And it turned out that a lot of people at the con were interested too. So we've structured this sort of as a conversation. You might not agree with one part of it, but I've got a list of several topics, and we're going to go through them all. And we don't necessarily all agree with each other. And then hopefully you'll learn something, and we'll learn from each other, and then we'll go to Q&A. So today we've got all the way on stage right, Veronica Valeros, got Daniel Cuthbert, and Antonios Atlasis. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce one of our sponsors that are making the whole conference possible, Phil Marshall with Security Scorecard, who's going to say a couple of notes, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. So come on up.
So thank you. I'm so impressed with the crowd here. I can't believe it. This is really impressive, and I'm just standing between you and a very interesting session. But I wanted to, first of all, just thank everyone in the room here for your wonderful questions down on the exhibit floor. I can speak for Security Scorecard, but also for several other vendors that I spoke to. I think at this event, especially above any other events, if we're paying attention, we're creating better products because of your questions and the depth of those questions. But I also wanted to sort of give my observation, or a couple of observations from this show. And as you might notice, I have a few gray hairs. So I've been to a few of these. And what's changed, and my key observation, is the audience. This used to be an event that was largely very technical folks. And what we're seeing now is a combination of suits and technical. And both audiences are valuable to us to talk to, but I also think what's changed and has changed for our company and other companies is that we're paying more attention to things like user interface, user experience, because we know that part of your job has changed because it's no longer security as a function, but it's security as a practice that informs not only your company's profile, but also your company's valuation. It's changed to that level. And I think that is a key observation that many of us on the floor are making now, that part of your job is not only talking about security, but talking about security to your board and to your C-level. And that's not an easy challenge, and we realize that. So just want to, again, thank you for your contribution to hopefully a better user experience for all of the titles and different users within your organization. We hope to do a better job and continue to do so. So thanks again. Appreciate it, and look forward to a great session.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Let's get this started.
Thanks.
I figure it's a pretty open-ended question, though. What do you think, as a community, as security experts, what are we winning at? What do we do really well? And also, what do we not do well? I mean, some of us have been in this game for decades, and we seem to be facing the same problems over and over and over. Like, what's going on? And so I want to throw it off to Daniel first.
We're really good at breaking stuff.
Yeah, we're really good at breaking stuff.
Really crap at fixing stuff. I think we're struggling at the moment. I termed it earlier, breach fatigue. There isn't a day that goes by where you don't hear of another breach, and you start to wonder, especially you've been doing it, this will be my third decade nearly, like, if we've got all the tools and the products and the people, why is it still so easy to hack? And it's almost embarrassing for me because, we are trying to fix it. We have built standards. There's great people out there, but are we just really bad at communicating how to make this stuff secure? Or is it securing stuff is just not sexy? It's easier to get a root shell, which is quite sexy. So,
but is it more like we're sucking less?
Yeah,
like we could suck more, but we're sucking less.
Yeah, but
so it's reducing the suckitude.
Yeah, we are definitely sucker lesser.
Yeah,
and that's probably a skill set on LinkedIn soon. I sucker lesser, maybe not. But yeah, I don't think it's as bad as it was in the 90s because that was just awful. And then the early 2000s with web apps, that was also really bad. But we're not where we should be.
But imagine you're in, automotive safety. And you've got airbags, and you've got anti-collision systems, and you've got safety belts, and you've got all this stuff, and you still have automotive fatalities, right? Is that where we're going to get to? There's just a sort of acceptable amount of damage, and we have to be okay with that? Or does our mentality tell us, no, zero break-in, zero breach fatigue?
Possibly, maybe that's down to the nature of who we are. We want everything to be that unicorn.
Yeah.
And maybe we're just really bad at admitting you're never going to get the unicorn, It will always be so bad.
What do you think?
Well, I know that most of us are quite optimistic and I want everything to be reduced down to zero. Presumably this is not possible. I agree that the level of defense has increased over the years. On the other hand, we can still see same attacks over and over again. For instance, in this show, we had at least 3 kernel-related attacks.
Yeah.
The topic is quite old. What's the difference then? Have we failed? I believe not. It's the fact that we introduce better defenses, but we have more sophisticated attacks on the other hand. So the whole game goes on and goes on over and over and over again. Now, shall we reach at some point that we will not face this kind of attacks? I don't know. We shall see. But certainly things are getting better and better.
So that's what we're good at. Or is that what we're bad at?
Well, it depends on the perspective.
Yeah.
You can say both.
I'd say, Dan, we're really good at breaking stuff. A new technology comes out and we're all over it really quickly. But then it seems like we move on to the new shiny. And is it because it's not really our job to fix it? Like, we didn't produce the thing. We didn't build the operating system, the CAN bus, whatever. We're just sort of like these tourists speculating on all the problems. But unless the manufacturer fixes their thing, all we can do is... and so is that maybe why we point out problems and move on? Because we're not in a position to fix it?
I think previously, the industry was very slanted to making rock stars of breakers. And I think unfairly, I've now moved into another defensive role. I still break stuff. But defense is damn hard. Anybody working in blue team or building and defending, respect, because that is not an easy task. I think you turned it. It's easy to sit in your bedroom and pwn stuff. But if you try and fix that with risk and compliance and politics, and do we have that network? Oh, crap. Yeah, we still got that network.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Maybe we can talk about the defense fatigue, right? Like you're breaking, you're alone, you're breaking stuff and it's so cool. And then it's like, okay, let's fix this. And then you start explaining things and they don't understand. Or maybe they do, but they don't have budget. So maybe you get 1 year of waiting to get the budget and then no one wants to fix that. So it's kind of really exhausting. And at some point it's like, what is the reward, right?
I'll just drop it on full disclosure mailing list and move on with my life instead of spending
it's
a
much
year.
Easier. And does it make a difference? Like at some point, if from the defense perspective, it's like, if no one cares, what should I? Oh, we do care, right? That's why we are breaking stuff, right? We want to make it better. But sometimes it's so exhausting that it's just not worth it. So I've seen a lot of defenders burn out because it's like, this is just too much.
So one of the ways we try to mitigate burnout, I think, is we try to automate a lot of things, right? So if you're doing something that's burning you out, to automate it and do the cool thing. Are we reaching the limits of that?
No, I don't think we're doing enough.
I think so.
Not enough.
I think there's still a lot of manual
Yeah.
A lot of manual stuff.
Yeah.
So, Antonio, we were talking a little bit beforehand. So what normally happens is we get together, we float some ideas, and then if we find ourselves actually talking about it for a while, it's like, stop, right? We have to save this for the room. Otherwise, we're going to have the conversation and you won't get to hear it. And Antonio's brought up a really good point where he thinks we're maybe not doing so well on mentoring.
Yeah, and actually, to be honest, this topic was brought by Veronica yesterday during the dinner that we had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she raised the point that, okay, I'm being approached by several young guys and asking what to do, how should move on. And I thought that this was a really good point and a really good question. So I was wondering, how can we mentor young people? For instance, this afternoon we had a very interesting, in my opinion, talk by two Israeli guys about training teenagers. Mm-hmm. This is one part, training, of course, but mentoring is also something else. And in my opinion, this is something that probably we fail as a community. And we need to see how we can improve this.
Yeah, so I think that we should go back to the basics at some point and start asking some hard questions on ourselves. Like, for example, like, we love what we do, but what about the next generation of security professionals? They are going to be solving problems that we maybe have no idea how they will look like. We don't know what the internet in 50 years would look like. So what are we doing right now to make sure that the people that is joining the field is ready for that? So there is a lot of lack of communication, and lack of mentoring, guidance, and lack of direction in the sense of what are the challenges we are facing, right? The questions we are doing right now, like, what are we good at? What are we bad at? Like, where shall we be?
When you listening to you too, it reminds me, like, back in the old school days, right before YouTube and Google. Like, you had to find a mentor. If you were a hacker, you didn't get anywhere unless you found a mentor hacker who would help steer you. And I remember spending half my time just trying to find a mentor. And once I found the mentor, oh my gosh, my life was so much easier. I didn't have to speculate about everything. I actually could ask questions. And we seem to have lost that.
Yeah. And I think it's so crucial because it's like, you can learn about, packet analysis, but if you have someone that it can show you the way, it's not a shortcut, right? You still have to do the work. But if you have someone around that will say, start here, it's much more easier, right? So we need more people kind of willing to pass. Well,
and I remember, I think some people think of it as like, well, if I help that person have a leg up, they're going to take my job. And it's like, no, there's plenty of jobs for everybody.
People is desperate for like hiring. Everyone is like, in 2 years, we will need so many millions of InfoSec positions. So we need to create that. It's like, the idea is that you don't lose the job. You have people there to help you do your job better. Yeah.
Out of interest, I'd love to know how many of you in here have been in this industry for less than 3 years? Show of hands.
Less than 3 years.
So that's quite a few.
Okay, well, turn it around. More than 10 years.
And so how many of you have mentored someone?
The 10-year-olds ones. Not, that sounds wrong. Those a bit 10-year-olds. That sounds really weird.
Okay. So I think we should need more of that. Like, sometimes it's not like, oh, I'm mentoring you for 5 years and spending my life with you. It's not about that. It's like reaching out and
well, it could be just going to a local hackerspace and helping out a local couple of people who have interests, right? It can be a lot of different things, but you're giving back and you're helping people find their path. So I want to tie it back a little bit to some of my remarks at the opening, which was, it seems like some of our problems we're facing now are sort of tech adjacent. They're more social, tied to tech. And I alluded to that with, I think we've built these giant, say, social media platforms, and only now we're starting to realize, like, hey, there might be some downside to centralizing all of that. Not from an attacker's perspective, we've got all the eggs in one basket. From a regulation perspective, you've got all the regulators that only have to look at, say, 5 platforms instead of 500. It's sort of an attractive nuisance that was a byproduct. And so I'm curious, from the panel and maybe the audience, does it feel like the next set of problems we're facing have much more of a social component, whether it's deep fakes or disinformation or synthetic personalities. I saw the talk on that. We're going to be dealing with these issues that seem to have much more of a social component. Does that sound right to you, or am I just kind of my own biases?
It does, and I think for me that's where I think we as an industry are going to struggle. I mean, traditionally, hackers are the least social people in the world. Like, we don't like humans. We don't want to talk to you. Please don't look at me. And that was fine if you were RAing some code or doing something with hardware. But now you've got to talk to people, and that's awkward. But
you could automate that, I think. You could probably...
that'd be a weird chatbot type thing.
You've got like 50 pull downs. No, Mom, I'm working right now. I don't want dinner. Yes.
But yeah, I think we've now got to get new skills of how do you deal with people and all the social stuff that you mentioned. And like generally we're bad at that. Really bad.
It's like our profession kind of evolved, right? It's like before we were just technical and it was enough. And then we got to learn to manage others because it was needed. And now we need to learn even more like politics and socials and stuff. And it's like, I don't think we can avoid it. Like we
basically,
are kind
we've got
of
to grow up.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Damn it.
Well, that ruined that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think so. And if we don't do that, why don't we just keep talking to our computers, right? What's the downside?
Fake.
I think we
Fakes.
I think we need to keep a leg on the social part because otherwise, like, we get to really like serious issues.
Like we get regulated.
We get regulated and we don't like it. So if you don't like it, you should.
You have to be involved.
Yeah. At least from my perspective.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
Well, certainly the topic is of interest nowadays, and we must deal with this. Now, this brings to my mind that we talk about diversity before coming here, and this is one aspect of diversity, the age. And the social media, for instance, are mainly used, if I'm not mistaken, by youngest. They are more familiar with this. When you are not familiar with something from outside, for instance, then you may not be able to see the risks behind it, and you may not be able, of course, to face or fix them or help someone to fix them. So this is maybe, and come back to our previous topic, that one more reason that we should try in order to train young people in order to face these things, instead of trying to face these things on our own. Who come from a different generation and...
Or maybe the flip side, like I have no idea what a YouTuber is. Like I never thought you could make a career, especially gazillions like they do, becoming a YouTuber. And that's a social thing. And generally we'd be terrible YouTubers because it'd be a black screen with us maybe mumbling.
Have you seen some of our friends who have Twitch channels? Hey, if you'd like to watch me reverse, I'll be on Twitch. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I'll just jump right on that and watch you fight Ida for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, oh look, he's loaded the debug module. But
we'd be bad at that. That's nature. But this next generation's really good at that. Like fair play to them. My kids watch this one guy called Blippi. And Blippi does these amazing things. He jumps around with orange glasses and he's, hey. It turns out he's an ex-US fighter pilot who's making $4.5 million a year.
Jumping around with orange
being an arse on YouTube. I'm like, respect. Like, I could never do that. But they seem to be better at becoming more social, which...
So that kind of, I'm going to use that as an awkward transition. So have you noticed, like, I think within the last year, Google switched ranking preference from desktop to mobile. So all of a sudden I get all these emails as the website administrator for DEF CON saying, hey, just so you know, we're now preferentially ranking mobile scores over desktop scores. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. There's more mobile use. And I look at like who's viewing our site with what platforms. Everybody in China is on mobile. So basically our future is mobile. Everything's going to have a mobile component if you want to be relevant. And so I was wondering, okay, does that mean we get to be more secure? These mobile, you're in the walled garden of Apple or Android, and as a byproduct, we might just, our nice overlords might make these more secure platforms for us. Right, as a byproduct. Like we've moved, just by avoiding the problem long enough, we've landed in this garden of two.
Yep. Well, one, because let's be honest, Android's never going to get secure.
Really?
I mean, we've tried that battle for.
But I saw their new product manager on Twitter saying he spent 3 months on the problem and it was fixed now. No.
Apple, yeah, I mean, like, fair play to Apple. I think what they've done is nothing short of phenomenal. Like, a modern iPhone and iOS is an incredibly secure device. And, you know, I tear it apart and I look at the hardware and I go, wow, like, that's what happens when you've got a budget of X. And they've hired some of the best people I've ever known. And I'm sure you can all agree, like, an iPhone is solid. Android, different path, I guess. They want coverage, and that makes really hard. You know, if you want to get on every single hardware device, it's not going to work. But maybe you've got a point. Like, we bypassed that ugly period of desktop, which was just bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, what does that entail for our industry? And so you've pushed the attackers up the stack. You have to be really good. And so what are the attacks now against mobile? We were talking earlier, like, is it down to somebody has to set up a fake base station? Somebody has to have a 0-day on a baseband? I mean, it's getting down to a pretty small number of things I have to worry about.
Well, what I wonder is it's more secure because it is really secure or because people is not looking at it? Like, Windows is still kind of, or was still kind of on the focus, on the spotlight, right? So there was like thousands of people looking at the security and trying to report vulnerabilities. And in mobile phones, I get the sense that yes, kind of we are reporting stuff, but it's not as fast. And we are not, for example, in iOS, you don't have antiviruses. You cannot capture your own traffic. You have no idea what is going on. So it's more secure so far, but in the end...
See, I disagree. Like, with the review board, we get to see the waves that happen. A year and a half ago, like, we saw a massive drop in anything to do with mobile, mostly because of political pressure in China saying, you shall not release your research. Now, traditionally, you'd see a good amount of Android O-Day coming into submissions. You're like, okay, Android's really bad. We'd rarely get iOS. Like, genuinely. This year's been a little bit different. There's been some good iOS. But if you look at, say, a exploit for latest iOS or iPhone, you know, NSO are dropping 50 million to our friends in the Middle East. Like, you know, a good RCE on iOS is still 1 million plus. There are people looking. It's just you've really raised that cost.
So why release it at a show when you're going to get $1 to $2 million for it?
Yeah, exactly. You know.
So the market pressure's driven it up to such a. But for Android, you can still get them.
Yeah.
Because the price isn't so high.
Yeah. It's the Walmart of the phone. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm wondering then, does that create sort of like two tiers, two classes of users? Like, I don't necessarily like iOS, but I absolutely have to use it. Like, I have no choice, right? I can't have an insecure or less secure phone. So I have to give up all these cool features that I liked on my Android, but I don't have a choice. And so when you look at your friends, it's like they're all using iPhones because they prioritize security over Blinky. And it really sort of creates two classes of the population, which is weird. It's not supposed to be like that.
So I spent a lot of time in Brazil, and Brazil still uses a lot of Android 4.
Android 4, 4.4.
Yeah, you know, which was great. You know, if you need to do lots of nasty stuff, but generally it's because they can't afford to upgrade, and that's an awful problem because most of the handsets out there are riddled with malware. Like, it's the desktop from the early 2000s.
Yeah,
but they can't afford to upgrade, and I think that's quite a bad position because by nature they're now punished for not having good security because they can't afford it.
Yeah. Okay, so I've kind of got a funny side thing, which was topics you alluded to earlier. The review board sees hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of submissions throughout the year, probably over 1,000 or more, considering all the conferences. So you get to see trends. And so I was asking them earlier, like, remember we used to hear a lot about canaries and virtualization and honeypots and deception services. And I was going through looking at the talks, and at least the talks I listened to where there were attackers, I never heard one speaker say, and then I check for the canary. Then I evade the deception system. It's like it's not even, was that a speed bump? Was that something that had a lot of promise, but it just didn't come to, who here uses deception services on your network?
One.
One.
Really?
Who runs canaries?
The same.
2, 3, 4.
I'd love to know why.
Like, what's going on there? It sounds so cool, but it's not. So you had a speculation of your sprinkled landmines all throughout your.
Yeah, I mean, like as an ex-attacker, like if you breach a network, you go for the juicy stuff, right? But as a defender, like we suck at basics. Like we have no idea what we have. And you look at any of the breaches, it was always that struts, bucks, or primface or something else. The moment you throw deception tech on there, we've now got 4 networks. So then you'll have IT trying to patch the deception network because they think it's outdated, but they don't really know, and the SOC's having no idea. Like it's an overhead of nightmare. I'd love to know why there's like 3 people using it. Like
that is shocking. I didn't expect that.
Could be also because of law issues or regulation issues, because for some organizations, for instance, having this kind of deceiving services may not be allowed.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Are there regulatory requirements? Like, why are you not using this kind of technology? I'm wondering.
Anybody, throw something out.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things, though, that we've come across? You mentioned the fall in Android 0-day. What are some of the other things that you find to be surprising when you...
Well, surprising I wouldn't say, but clearly in this show there is... Okay, it's not new, but there was a clear trend on using machine learning almost for everything.
Machine learning everywhere.
Yes, exactly.
Please stop with the machine learning.
Yeah. About that.
There were 5 talks presented in the show dealing with network defense, with OSID, with simulating attackers, with a lot of stuff. And I remember many, many more submitted in order to be presented. So there is clearly an effort to use machine learning for everything in cybersecurity.
Is it the new blockchain?
Yes, and AI, because AI blockchain helps machine learning.
Oh, right. With the quantum.
Just remember that.
With the quantum.
Yeah.
But the point is, machine learning itself not only is not new, but I have seen this story repeated now, because I recall from my early days when I was dealing mainly with networks, there was then an effort to use machine learning for network-related problems.
And IDS, it was all about clustering.
Yeah.
And
Yep. But IDS is still here. Where is machine learning in the networks?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, eventually, all this trend that we face nowadays regarding machine learning will have any real effect? Will have any products that they will stay there, even at the same level as IDS? I mean, that to be used somehow, or they will vanish after some years?
I think we even went farther, because most of the talks were like deep learning, so that's deeper, right? But another effect that I noticed is that this generated like division, like people voting for machine learning, thumbs up, and then people hating it, saying this doesn't work, don't sell me smoke, right?
People like Daniel saying, I want superficial learning, not the deep.
Superficial. Don't learn anything, just do the basics, right? But I think like we are making a mistake, and I think there is a topic that just keeps coming, that is going back to the basics, right? Machine learning is great because right now we have a lot of data, and it's good at looking at a lot of data, but you still need humans that tells the machine how to work, how to learn, what to learn. So we are needing analysts to give the input, and we should not expect deep learning to do anything extraordinary, because we are still not there. And again, like we are still falling in like phishing scams and macros attacks and IoT open telnet ports. So we need to kind of, I think, slow down.
I wonder if
cover the basics.
I'm wondering if we're not over specializing, but I think we're over specializing to a certain degree, in the sense that do you have enough time to understand all the various permutations of ML and AI, and is it an expert system, and is it and then all the other tech. I mean, there's so much going on in our space. No one can keep it all in their head. So that means you have to be part of a team, and then you have to have divisible skills amongst the team, and it goes back to sort of the fatigue question, where I try to protect the DEF CON network. I spend a lot of time on that. And I can tell you, over the last 5 years, it has gotten monumentally more complicated. Like, to run a web server 5 years ago was pretty straightforward. Now I've got to deal with DNSSEC and OCSP revocation and key pinning, and it goes on and on and on. And then the DNS server used to be one file. Now I have to deal with everything has gotten more complicated. And so it's like I'm doing the basics, running a webmail and thing, but I'm spending like 3 times as much effort doing it because we just keep layering on more and more technology, and we're kind of standing.
So it's like the other sciences. For instance, in medicine, you must have expertise on something. You can not have or doctors. You cannot be a doctor and you can cure everything.
Yeah.
You have specialities, right? So probably we're leading there as well in the cyber science that you need to be expert in a very, very specific topic, which becomes narrower and narrower all the time.
Right.
And the whole team eventually will defend the castle.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, in the olden days, you could defend with 4 or 5 people. Now I need 20 people. The joke is just to understand the JavaScript executing on my web page.
Yeah. No, that's a team of 50 just to do JavaScript.
Yeah.
Let's not beat any bushes here. That's a mess.
Yeah, and so we do that because it helps our careers. Right? You're the guy that's the expert in this one little problem, but that means we have less generalists. So raise your hands if you consider yourself a generalist. Okay, raise your hands if you have gotten by being a specialist. Oh, less specialists than I thought.
What is the rest?
Yeah, what's the rest of you then?
Yeah.
Who else are you?
You breakers.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do you see that there's a lack of generalists that see bigger pictures that might be needed for this new social requirement, or
We need both.
Yeah,
We have a general doctor.
but we need both, but what do we have?
I don't think we have enough
No.
generalists out there. Like, from my perspective, I see a lot of people really specializing really fast. Like most of the young people, they just go straight out of school to like reversing
Malware.
some malware, really specific malware, right? And you talk about other stuff in general InfoSec and they kind of not know it, right? So why is that? And how that will make your work better? Like it's something missing that we are not fulfilling.
It's interesting because like the malware thing has definitely been on the trend in the last 5 years. Like if you want to get into IT sec, it's malware. It's malware reverse engineering. But as an ex-attacker, like the malware is just that small part. It's something I'm going to drop to get somebody to do something, and then I'm rape and pillaging the rest of the network. But I need networking skills, app skills, all that kind of stuff. And I worry that the concentration of malware and learning IDA or anything else, it's like you're forgetting about the fact that it's a bigger picture.
Yeah. And there is a lot of other jobs out there that people, are looking for, right, to fill. And I think that people do not understand that being a journalist means that you can look and solve the problem in a different way with more knowledge and more specific. And you can also get better at the basics, right? Like I'm seeing a lot of malware. Oh, cool. I have more to reverse, but that's bad. It's like something in my network that is not working.
We need more of mainframe. How many people here work with mainframes? It's 1, 2,
keeping it real.
3. There's
Yeah.
literally they're guaranteed jobs for life because I can tell you now we can never get rid of them. A bit like Telnet.
Telnet.
It is the cockroach of the IT industry.
Yeah.
It survived everything, and it's still here.
Well, and if you look at the history of where FTP came from, right, it predates TCP.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you can never get rid of it.
Amit yesterday tweeted some bit of malware was using ftp.exe, and they're like, "Oh, mind blown!" I'm like, "Can't kill that either." So,
going back to review board stuff. Also talk a little bit about, I've noticed diversity of people submitting.
Yeah.
Right? There seems to be more international, more Asian, and some of the Japanese submissions have just been killing it lately.
It's so traditionally you had a lot of have the circuit people submitting the same kind of thing, and especially for the USA and here the last 2 years, like there are people you've never heard of, but their talks like you're like wow,
Amazing.
So this traditionally Japan has always been very quiet on the global research world. Like it's maybe one every couple of years. This year, you're like, wow, what has happened? And there have been some phenomenal talks. I mean, I went and had a full mangasm with the pasta talk because I'm like, great research, amazing problem solved, well built. I'm like, that's solid researching and engineering. There's that. There's a lot of other countries you've never really expected anything for now pushing stuff through. So I think the balance is definitely tipped. It's now very much a global research community than just UK, US, Germany,
Yes.
Holland.
Yeah. And I think that diversity is great. And I think it also relates with this new generation of professionals, right? So we are seeing like researchers presenting top-notch research, like really young. It's like, cool, that's great. Like, some people some years ago complained like, oh, we go to conferences, all the same people. And we were...
Not anymore.
Not anymore. And we were wondering, where is the young people, right? Where are the submissions? And now we can see that, right?
Well, Steve and I were having a chat, and a gentleman, I don't know if he's in the room, came up. It was his first submission to Black Hat. It was on Windows kernel protection, like a solid topic. This was the first time he's ever submitted to a conference. His family's so proud. His gym teacher was proud. His grandparents are proud. From Russia. I'm like, respect. Like, this is your first con submission, and this is a solid subject. Like, you are protecting the Windows kernel. Like, that's amazing. That's your first submission. Like, Jesus.
Wow. Yeah. What are you going to do? Like, how do you follow that up? Yeah. Okay. So I have a final kind of comment question, and then we're going to move to the audience participation. And then we were talking about log generation and threat feeds, and how much some of these threat feeds cost, and how actionable is the intelligence? Is it actually useful? And I was joking. It's like, well, I get attacked all the time. How do I monetize my logs? Can I make some money? It's like, we should all pull together. I think we'll start a new business. I'll call it NewCo. You send me all of your logs. I'll find somebody to buy them all, and we'll share all the money, and it'll be like the Black Hat beer pool, right? Because, like, our logs have got to be just as valuable as those other people's logs. I mean, how is it any different?
I think if you look at people who are targeted a lot, like, that stuff's golden. It's not just some random box in Romania. It's, who wouldn't want to pop you?
Yeah.
Like, the stuff.
It's got to be worth at least 10 beers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody?
That's cheap. Yeah, like, you should ask for
They're
more.
really big beers. Really big beers.
Yeah, but I think like the discussion on threat intelligence log is like, I think there are these hypes, right? Oh, threat intelligence, oh, feeds, or machine learning, or blockchain. Let's not talk about that. But and we really need to be more critical. We really need to ask the hard question: is this useful? Is
like, where's the scientific analysis that shows that threat feeds actually?
So there was this great talk during these 2 days, doing a really nice comparison. So it was like, it's more useful to run my honeypot than paying a lot of money for IOC feed that after 2 days not worth anymore, right? So I think that we should start like questioning why I'm buying this. Like, make them hard, make them convince you. Like, show me the numbers, right?
But that was always one of the things. Like, the early hacking days was question or verify everything. And I think we've lost a lot of that. We trust a lot of, oh yeah, okay, so it must do that. Blockchain will fix everything. How many Bitcoin millionaires are in the room? And that is awkward.
And I think that we all know, oh, this is hype, but let's buy it just in case it works, right? So, no, we should kind of ask the questions before that.
Okay, let's go to some questions. Raise your hand. We've got a microphone on either side of the room. Okay, it looks like this side is winning, this side is snoozing.
So you all said we need to improve our social, political, procedural skills, and that's something, learning those soft skills takes a lot of time, and mentoring people to know those soft skills takes a lot of time. And we all know that the mentors and the people that are being mentored are too short in time, which means it'll come at the cost of learning technical skills, at least to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. So at the same time you've said that, I've heard a lot of, we need to improve our technical skills. So where's the balance? We can't do everything.
I'll take a crack at that first, which is, I think you can't be all things to everybody, right? And people do have natural affinity. Some people are better at certain skills than others. And so I would say if you are somewhat technical, but you lean more toward the soft skills, maybe that's your role in InfoSec, right? Don't try to be a Halvar reverse engineering. If you know you can't be at that level of the game, put your energy into where you'll be most effective, right? You'll get the best wins. You'll be the most helpful to your organization. And so it might just be you reflecting on like, what are your strengths and playing to your strengths. Yeah. I don't think we're saying everybody has to have all these skills, but I think if we acknowledge that there is a role for those skills and those skills are valuable and they will help us, then we should put some energy thinking about them.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, like when you're starting out in this industry, you have like such a wide array of things you can do. And naturally, you levitate to what you're good at. Now, you could be a Halvar who has a God-given gift at just tearing stuff. You can be Mr. Fitz over there. When it comes to hardware, it just falls apart in front of him. But you're not going to do everything. And I think naturally, as your career goes on, you go, well, I'm really good at, I enjoy hardware. I understand how electronics works. But put me in front of IDA, and there's just lots of blue lines and weird red. I have no idea. And then you expand upon the hardware type stuff. You shouldn't try and do everything, because I think you will burn out really, really quickly.
Yeah. And I want to add that, like 10 years ago, we were joining the industry in a different time. Like, we were not so pressured with time, and we were like more relaxed. I could take a day to learn something. And right now it's like, companies want you to be productive in 3 months, right? And you are just out of school. So, I think in that case, like if you don't take the time right now to learn it, you will never have the time. So you need to, I need 1 day a week to learn this and negotiate, right? It's your career. You will be more effective in 3 years.
Like a senior after 5 years.
Going on to the next question. Sorry. So we can get some couple in there.
Hello. Touching back on the beginning of the conversation and we have attackers and defenders and not enough, and we trip all for the same problems all over and over again. So it seems to me like attackers' work is much sexier, and like both attackers and defenders, I kind of get the same compensation on the market. So it seems, don't you think there is a disproportion of that? There are more attackers which find problems, but there are not enough defenders to fix them. And if you agree, like, do you think there is a way to fix it somehow, to make a defender position more sexier?
Yes, and we're definitely trying to do that in the review board. Like, we want good defensive talks because they're harder. Like, I think the day of popping calc on an internet-connected dildo are well and truly behind us. Like, move on. Seriously.
Yeah, the stunt hacking, kind of?
Yeah, stunt hacking. Like, it has its place sometimes, but you popped something that shouldn't be on the internet, and like, okay, so what? I think defensive talks, and we do look at that in the review board. Like, this is a cool thing you can do, and somebody can action that on Monday morning, and this is going to save a lot of stuff, like respect. But I think the balance is still very much in favor of the attackers. And defense is hard. Look at Hacking Team. Like, they were very good at breaking stuff, and they got popped really badly. OPSEC and defense is hard.
One other reason for this disproportion could be that an attacker needs to find one weakness, one bug, in order to break something. The defender has to defend more or less everything. He will design a protocol, the higher level protocol. He has to examine all the fields, etc., etc. It's much more difficult. It has a broader scope. If he forgets something, the attacker can find it, and it's game over for the defender. So I believe this is one of the main reasons, in addition to what you said, that it is sexier to be an attacker. This is one more reason that why we have all these attacking style talks. But when I see an attacking style talk, I see it as a defender, to be honest, because this helps us to make products better, to improve the kernels we discussed before, etc., etc. If we didn't have all this effort from the attacker community, we wouldn't have all this improvement the defensive.
When I've talked to some universities, I was talking to one that said, we want to be world class. We want to have the best information security program. I'm like, that's great. I like your enthusiasm. You've got budget. Fantastic. Are you going to be okay teaching offense to your students?
Cricket.
Maybe we'll be the second best. You know, it's like there were some hard questions. It's like they didn't fully realize, like, to be the best, you're going to have to teach offense, and they couldn't get that past the dean of the school. Okay, we're going to take a question over here, and that'll be toward the end.
It's more like a consideration. If I step out of this kind of community and I think about designing a product, the perception of a company today is that I design something, the market wants it, I want to put it on the market, and then I have a cage with 3 different levels of badges with a bunch of dogs, which are these technology people. They come out, they say I did everything wrong, so they start doing things, they correct, they patch, then everything, they delay my stuff, and then they go back in the cage. So my feeling is that we're talking about social and everything, they are not social. We need, in my opinion, to socialize, to make these technology people more social, to be part of the process. But they have to start doing it.
I'm not sure we should put them in cages. That's a bit hardcore. I mean, dentists are odd, but cages might be a bit weird.
Well, and I'd say we should socialize the people pushing these products out so fast because they're doing social harm, but somehow we're the ones to be blamed for it? That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I sort of get where you're coming, but I think that there's a balance here. I think, it's easy to smack Internet of Things at the moment, but at the same time, consumers demand stuff really cheap, instantly. Like, there's got to be some give and take.
Well, we still have airbags.
You still don't get run over, yeah.
Yeah, you don't get to buy a car without an airbag.
No, that's true.
Okay, so we're winding down on time. I want to try one last question, and then that'll be it. So, sorry about that.
So, if you notice OWASP in the last 10, 20 years, it hasn't really changed. Vendors keep on producing products that have security vulnerabilities. I think that's where we're still in the job here, I guess. So, I guess developers do not learn. They will have been spending more than 20 years with the same problem, seeing the same problems over and over again.
But it's not the same developers.
Exactly.
Right? You're cranking out new developers time and time again.
Yeah.
Which is a bit strange. And I was thinking that there would be some new regulation that would force vendors to actually create more secure software. But at the moment, it seems that even from a regulation side, the problem is being passed down to banks or other institutions, GDPR and everything else. What do you say? Do you think that we will ever hold vendors accountable for producing crappy software, or is it?
I mean, that's a long conversation, but I'll have one observation. If you search for source code examples, almost all of them are insecure, right? So if all you do is go to your favorite code repository and make a comment when you see insecure code, then the next person to come along and use that code, right, might copy and paste the secure version. And I've talked to people who produce books for universities on, there's a couple standards in the United States. And it's like, if I got $300,000 or whatever and code reviewed every example in your textbooks, would you include them so that we get examples? And it turns out it's not a $10, $20, $100 million problem. We're talking a couple $100,000 to review code in textbooks. Right? So some of the problems we think are huge, they're really small. We just need to get people together to do it.
I'm waiting for a backdoor via Stack Overflow in a common code example.
Yeah.
How many people copy and paste from Stack Overflow? Been there. Laravel, what a pain in the ass.
I remember talking to somebody at a major search engine, and they said, you submit us the proper code, and we're happy to make it the #1 search result. We're just too busy to do it. So, I mean, you'll find that people in industry are accepting, will accept some of our examples. It's just we have not organized as a community to do that.
Yeah, and sometimes there are developers that they want to do secure coding, but they don't have time because deadlines. So I think it's like a balance. But keep pushing and keep trying to educate your bosses to kind of accept that as well. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sticking around for the Locknote, and thank you for making this a really good black hat. Hope to see you next year.
Thanks.
See you guys around.